one of the aspects of the story that you really bring to light is that even in the case of default, the government seems to make money,
Right.
and in some instances, depending on which numbers they put out at any given time, they actually may make more than if the loan is actually paid off.
Yeah, yeah. No, if you no, there's a fierce argument about this, and there are some people who are using a technique called fair value accounting to argue that the government is actually not making money off defaults. But if you look at the White House's budget projections, it says that, routinely going back years, that even on defaulted, say, staff, the year 2010, for instance, the government was projecting that it was going to earn 122% returns on defaulted Stafford loans. Like, forget about the people who actually paid back the loans with interest. They were going to, because of all the fees and penalties that are incurred when people don't pay off their loans, because the government has extraordinary collection powers. They're able to fine you. They're able to attach your salaries, your disability payments, your income tax returns. If you make money legitimately anywhere, they're going to get it if you owe them money. So they, when you default, you incur all these penalties, and theoretically they're making a profit on it. Now they dispute that. They say that, when you figure in the cost of hiring private collectors into the equation, they say they're only making 85 or 90% on those loans, but still the projections are over 100%, and it's certainly not close enough. They're certainly not losing enough money to make them lose sleep about giving away loans to kids who might pay back. They're close enough to making a profit on it that they feel confident about lending more money.
And anybody working in a consumer credit division of any banking enterprise, if you told them that their recovery rate on defaulted loans would be 85 or 90%, they'd be incredibly excited.
Oh yeah, no. Anybody who could deliver that credit cards, I mean, that person would be, CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase within 10 minutes. I mean, it's the major banks don't even come close to making that kind of a return. 10%, 15% is a good recovery rate. In some circumstances, it's even lower than that. In the post-crash years and in 2008, 2009, it went under 10% for a lot of these consumer credit companies. But the government again has extraordinary collection powers that nobody else has. Not only are they able to avail themselves of all the data about where people are, from the IRS, from other agencies, but again, they can attach anything. So if you legitimately have income, they just take it. They don't have to ask you for it. You don't have to make a decision about whether or not you're going to pay it back. They just take it.
And when we talk about this, I mean, the implications of this are obviously pretty wide. I mean, you cover a lot of these stories of people whose lives as individuals have been just destroyed because they are saddled with this debt, because they end up losing their disability payments. What's the other danger? I mean, systemically speaking, I mean, as we move forward and we have more and more people who start out their lives saddled with this kind of debt, what are the broader implications?
Well, this is to me, it's really similar to what happened in the housing crisis, because so in the housing crisis, both of these problems, these gigantic piles of debt, these sort of bubbles that are happening right now with student loans and with mortgages, they were both driven by the overavailability of credit. So in the housing crisis, you had the problem was that all these banks had figured out a way to disguise subprime mortgages and sell them as highly rated securities to institutional investors all over the world. Unions, mutual funds, pension plans, whatever. And so they were buying all these mortgages and mortgage-backed securities. They didn't know what they were buying, but because there was such a market for people to buy these mortgages, that allowed banks to have lots of credit available to give to people to buy houses. Because there was such a demand for those mortgages, they were able to go out into neighborhoods and basically give mortgages to anybody with a pulse. And so that created this horrible situation where there was suddenly this enormous explosion of subprime debt that expanded very, very rapidly in very similar fashion to the student loan situation, and ultimately it blew, and we had a systemic financial crisis as a result of it. Now, this is a little different because the ultimate problem here is that the government's going to be on the hook for all that money and not private banks. But we're going to the possibility of mass defaults is clearly there. You clearly have a whole bunch of major employers in private universities and public universities that are dependent upon high tuitions, and if that money were suddenly to dry up because of mass defaults, because people couldn't pay for these loans anymore, then you'd have a serious problem economically all over the country. But the real problem is that this overavailability of credit, the fact that the government keeps cranking out as many loans as they do, is just causing college prices to rise, and they're rising at a ridiculous rate, three or four times the rate of inflation, and that's just unsustainable. It's going to, it's eventually going to create all kinds of economic problems, from people who are saddled with too much debt to people who can't afford to go to college to, to the collapse of universities and all sorts of problems.
I want to talk about the drivers of college education, but one of the things before we get there, one of the things that that I think is really problematic about this is that I don't think there is going to be that type of acute crisis where we have this moment where everyone, because you had it in the real estate market, because at one point you have this real estate bubble that is bound to burst because it was so it was based on it was so there was no real sort of substance to the value of these homes in the same way that college is important to people's future earnings, and the defaults, it's unlikely they're going to happen, simultaneously, I guess.
Right.
The problem, it seems to me, is that you're going to have this sort of slow simmer of problems with individuals who are not going to implicate the broader society in as acute a fashion as the real estate bubble bursting. You're just going to have people who are just locked into jobs, unable to pay. This is just one more sort of slow boil, I guess, for the middle class and for lower income people. You're
going to have 100 million seriously depressed people. It's going to be the consequence of this. I mean, right? I mean, that's kind of what's going to happen is, all these people that I talked to for this story, they get out of school, they immediately have to take whatever job they can because they're immediately staring at having to pay $600 or $800 a month and to pay off their loans, no matter where they went to school, and that rises very quickly if it's not an ordinary college, if it's law school, if it's something like that, and you're stuck paying this enormous bill until you're 50 or 60 in some cases for your entire life, and it's a major factor in people's lives. I mean, I had a half a dozen young women write to me and talk about how they didn't have kids because of this. I had people call me and tell me they went into a life of crime because the government can attach any legitimate income. So the only way, the fastest way to repay something like a law school student, a series of law school loans, is to deal drugs or make money that in some way that the government can't keep track of. I had multiple people tell me stories like that. So, but more than anything, I just had people who were just depressed and just felt weighed down and hopeless, and this is like an entire generation of young people who who entered this kind of satanic contract when they were 18 or 19 years old, and they're never going to get out of it. And how that could be good for anybody is for the country in general. I don't see it.
And I mean, it seems to me, and because I want to talk. I mean, you outline why this should be a problem that both progressives and conservatives agree upon, and I think and we'll talk about that. But I think the nub of this is that you have this sort of weighing down on people, and we're still not in any way addressing the central question, which is, as a society, do we think it's in the best interest of having an as educated a population as possible? And none of this addresses this. But talk about that sort of why you see. Or how this should be problematic for conservatives and progressives, because this is an interesting question. Because I'm not as convinced that the number one driver of inflation in these colleges, I mean, it's certainly the ever-ready pool of money to support the increase in the sort of like gilding, as you call it, of these colleges is a major factor. But the other part of that is that we no longer have sort of the ballast that public universities provided, because they have been cutting back, states have been cutting back on support for public universities, raising the cost of tuition to make up for that money. And right. we have a situation where we sort of quasi-socializing the costs and privatizing the upside again here.
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly, it's a perfect storm. I mean, it's both things. Instead of having a natural check on costs, in the sense that you could always rely upon a relatively cheap state-subsidized education at a state university system, and that in most states in this country was pretty good. But after the crash in 2008, when states started losing revenue left and right, one of the first things that they did is they stopped subsidizing state education, and the colleges made up for it by raising tuition, and most of those tuitions, or a lot of that tuition money, came from federally backed student loans. So it was indirectly kind of a federal bailout of the state college system, except that it was paid for not by taxpayers but by young kids taking out loans. So yeah, both things are in play. I think clearly if you had some kind of natural check on prices that way, if you had states providing low cost upper education, that really was a good education that allowed people to get jobs and allowed people to leave school with real skills and real knowledge, then you couldn't possibly have all of these for-profit colleges that cost 3 or 4 times as much and didn't deliver good educations continuing to exist and driving up prices. That just wouldn't happen. But I just don't think I just don't think that there's a collective belief anymore that it's in the state's best interest to invest in kids and invest in their futures. I just think that that's been kind of left by the wayside as all these states deal with their budget crises. They're not thinking about investing in the future. They're really just thinking about how they're going to get through the next year. And you see this kind of behavior. It's the same as when they sell off highways and parking garages. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's this year thinking as opposed to down the road thinking.